The Gradall Highway Speed Hydraulic Excavator has been built by Gradall Industries Incorporated since 1951 at our New Philadelphia, Ohio manufacturing facility. Gradall currently builds 4 different types of hydraulic excavators: crawlers, wheeled, highway speed, and highly specialized mining and steel mill machines. A Gradall hydraulic excavator is designed, tested, and built to the highest standards. In order to get the most out of your Gradall, it is important that the operator take their responsibilities seriously. This begins with the operator reading, understanding, and complying with the information in the Operator and Safety Manual, the AEM Off-Highway Dump Truck Manual, the AEM Hydraulic Excavator Safety Manual, all safety and instructional decals and plates, any optional equipment instructions. The operator must also be trained in the safe and proper operation of the excavator by an experienced and qualified instructor. This video is to be used as part of the Gradall Operator Training Program and should never be used as the sole means of training. It is important to realize that your Gradall may be a different model and may look and operate differently than the Gradall excavators shown in this video. Always refer to your excavator's Operator and Safety Manual for proper procedures. Safety is every operator's responsibility. Taking charge of safety means working with the right attitude, proper personal protective equipment, and with the job site and machine properly prepared for the job. Gradall uses the Safety Alert symbol on warning decals on the excavator and in the Operator Safety Manual to highlight safety concerns. This symbol will be used in this video for the same purpose, along with the following 3 signal words to emphasize the seriousness of certain hazards. Danger indicates an imminently hazardous situation which, if not avoided, will result in death or serious injury. Warning indicates a potentially hazardous situation which, if not avoided, could result in death or serious injury. Caution indicates a potentially hazardous situation which, if not avoided, may result in minor or moderate injury. The Operator and Safety Manual is an essential part of the machine. If it is missing, contact your local Gradall distributor to obtain a replacement. Now let's address your personal safety. You should always wear a reflective safety vest, safety shoes, and protective eyewear with side shields when operating or servicing a Gradall excavator. You should also wear a hard hat, hearing protection, and work gloves to provide protection if required by the job site conditions or with certain attachments like mowers or hammers. A respirator may be required in dusty conditions to provide protection from breathing in dust or silica. Operators must possess a valid, applicable driver's license and be in good physical and mental condition. An operator must not be using medication which could impair abilities or be under the influence of alcohol or any other intoxicant during the work shift. The operator must be alert and physically capable of operating the equipment. Do not use cell phones or personal music devices during operation. When entering or exiting the excavator cabs, always face the cab and maintain 3-point contact using the designated steps and handrails. Never use control levers, armrests, or the steering wheel for support when entering or exiting the cabs. Gradall excavators are designed for one person only. Never have a person in both cabs while the engine is running. That goes especially for children. If you see any damage to the excavator, hear unusual noises, or feel any unusual vibration, discontinue use immediately. Have it repaired before you continue operating. Always keep in mind that any modifications to a Gradall hydraulic excavator must be approved by Gradall. Now, some things to remember. Prior to operation, read and understand the Operator and Safety Manual. Use 3-point contact when climbing on or off the excavator. Use personal protective equipment. Gradall excavators are designed for one-person operation. The operator is responsible for the safe operation of the excavator and the safety of all others working around the machine by ensuring that the work area is safe. Conducting a worksite hazard assessment and continually being aware of your surroundings is one of the most important things you will do. Inspect the worksite for hazards prior to each shift or when the site or conditions change. If hazards are found during the assessment, it is the operator's responsibility to eliminate the hazard or ensure the hazard has been reported and can be easily identified and avoided while working. Walk around the worksite to see what conditions may be encountered during the course of your work shift. Always locate and identify buried utilities before digging. In the United States, use the national one-call number 811. Serious injuries and damage could occur if underground utilities are contacted or broken. Search for overhead electrical lines. Never operate the excavator in an area where overhead power lines exist without ensuring the lines are de-energized. Examine the site for culverts or drains that may not support the weight of the Gradall. Open trenches must be protected or barricaded from workers and pedestrians, and shoring must be used when workers enter trenches. Consult OSHA for additional regulations regarding trenches. Avoid excessively steep slopes or unstable surfaces. If you must drive on a slope, keep the boom low, pointing downhill, and proceed slowly with extreme caution. Avoid driving across excessively steep slopes under any circumstance and undercutting the rear tires. Ensure that personnel and obstructions are not within the circle of safety around the machine. The circle of safety represents the area around the machine that is within the swing radius of the boom. It is the operator's responsibility to stop operating the excavator if personnel enter the circle of safety. When the excavator needs to be positioned on a roadway or near walkways, the operator must ensure there are adequate traffic control devices such as flagmen, barriers, warning lights, cones, signs, or other warning devices in place. Now some things to remember. Conduct a worksite hazard assessment. Call before you dig, 811. De-energize overhead power lines. Establish the circle of safety. Prior to each work shift, the operator must perform a pre-operation inspection. When doing this, remember to use the pre-operation inspection form included in your operator and safety manual. The form is divided into two parts. One side covers the engine off walk-around inspection and should be used first. The other side is used to perform a function check. Keep extra copies of this form handy so that a thorough and consistent inspection can be made before each shift. Let's start with the pre-operation inspection. The inspection is possible with the boom stowed in the boom rest. However, it may be easier if the boom is fully extended, swung over the rear of the chassis, and lowered to the ground with the bucket completely closed. Prior to starting the walk-around, turn the engine off, apply the park brake, remove the keys, and attach a Do Not Operate tag near the key switch in both cabs. When inspecting your excavator, be sure to check the following. Make sure the operator and safety manual is in each cab. Verify that all decals and plates are in place and legible. Make sure the chassis cab windows and door are not broken and close properly. Make sure the chassis cab seatbelt is functional and undamaged. Check the front axle and steering linkage. Make sure they're in good condition with no cylinder or hose leaks. Check to see that the wheels are not cracked, bent, or damaged. Check the tires for proper inflation, adequate tread, and sidewall damage. Make sure the air tanks are drained of any water and show no signs of damage to the tanks, air lines, or hoses. The work lights should be clean and undamaged. Make sure the upper structure cab windows and door are not broken and open and close properly. The fuel tank should be full, not leaking, and the fill cap securely fastened. Check to make sure the mud flaps are in proper position, pinned up for digging or down when driving. Check to make sure the rear axles have no leaks and all axle mounting bolts are tight and undamaged. Make sure the hydraulic oil reservoir is filled to the correct level and the hydraulic oil is clear and free of contamination. Be sure the boom tilt bearing is lightly greased and is undamaged. Check to make sure the main control valve cover opens and closes properly. Also, the main control valve shouldn't show any signs of leaks. Check the battery cables, make sure they're not rubbing on anything and are securely fastened to the batteries. The cover should also be properly secured. Make sure the power steering fluid, engine oil, and coolant are at the proper levels. Be sure the windshield washer fluid level is adequate in each cab. Make sure the radiator is not leaking or plugged with debris, and also the transmission and transfer case are not leaking and have no signs of damage. Check to make sure the brakes are not damaged and that they're in good condition. Make sure all grab handles and steps are secure and clean. Make sure the horn is clean of debris and is undamaged. Check that all headlights, marker lights, and turn signals are clean and function properly. Be sure all of the boom rollers are adjusted and show no flat spots or damage. Be sure the bucket or other attachment is properly installed and the wedge bolts are tight. Make sure the mirrors are properly adjusted to allow for adequate vision on both sides of the excavator. Be sure that all required maintenance and lubrication has been conducted in accordance with the schedule in the operator and safety manual. Check to make sure the overall machine does not have any cracks on the boom, the upper structure frame, chassis frame, or on the fiberglass covers. Be sure the walking surfaces are clean of debris and oil. Finally, it is important to be aware of the operating characteristics of the hydraulic and fuel systems. Do not operate this equipment with hydraulic oil or fuel leaking. Oil and fuel are combustible and could be a fire hazard. If you must pressurize the system to find a suspected leak, never, under any circumstance, use your hand. Put on safety glasses and gloves, and use a piece of wood or cardboard for leak detection. High-pressure fluid can be invisible and injected into the body through the skin, causing serious injury or perhaps death. If an injection should happen, seek medical attention immediately. Now, some things to remember. Use the pre-operation inspection form while conducting your walk-around inspection. Do not use your hand to check for leaks. Put a Do Not Operate tag near key switches. After conducting the walk-around inspection, you should perform a function check. All the required functional checks for both cabs are located on the pre-operation inspection form. Start by entering and checking the following functions from the chassis cab: the park brake, the neutral start switch, make sure it functions properly. Make sure the engine starts and it runs properly. All dash lights, indicators, and gauges should illuminate. Make sure the low air warning light illuminates and the buzzer sounds when air pressure falls below 60 psi. Check to make sure air pressure reaches a minimum of 100 psi. Be sure the service brake functions properly. The transmission should shift properly and smoothly. Be sure that steering is possible once the excavator has begun to move. Prior to performing the checks from the upper structure cab, the operator must prepare the chassis for remote operation. To do this, follow the instructions on the decal located in the chassis cab. After placing the excavator in remote mode, move to the upper structure cab. To continue the function check, the operator must be seated in the upper structure cab with a control cutout lever in the down position. Do not start or operate the excavator if others are within the circle of safety. Always sound the horn before starting the engine. Carefully perform the remaining function checks listed on the back of the pre-inspection form. The engine should not be able to be started with the control cutout lever in the down position. The engine should start and run properly. With the engine running, you should not be able to operate any functions with the control cutout lever in the upright position. Operate the boom up and down. In and out. Tilt left and right. Move bucket open and closed. Swing left and right and verify that the swing lights flash. Set the park brake and ensure it prevents travel. Make sure the travel alarm sounds at all times while the travel and steering pedals are depressed. Release the travel pedal to verify the dig brake functions properly. Only after you have completed a thorough inspection of the excavator and ensured the machine is functioning properly are you ready to go to work. Now some things to remember. Do not operate if others are within the circle of safety. Perform a complete function check. If the excavator is not operating properly, have the unit repaired before continued use. The operation of a Gradall excavator can be divided into three categories: travel mode, driving on the road; remote mode, excavator operation; and parking. When in travel mode, certain procedures must be followed to ensure your excavator will operate properly. If your excavator is equipped with a cold weather start aid, do not spray additional ether into the air cleaner. Follow the instructions listed in the engine manual. Failure to comply may cause an explosion, resulting in death or serious injury. To start the engine, fasten your seat belt, apply the parking brake, and place the transmission in neutral. Move the travel remote switch to the travel position. Turn the ignition to the on position. This will cause the engine stop, check engine, and optional preheat lights to illuminate for 2 seconds. Verify the PTO lights are not illuminated. When the optional preheat light goes out, turn the ignition switch to start the engine. The starter will not engage if the main PTO light on the right dash panel is illuminated. After the engine starts, observe the gauges frequently to be sure that all systems are functioning properly. If the engine is cold, let it idle for 3 to 5 minutes before operating under a load. The chassis air brake system includes the service brakes, emergency brake, and parking brake. The operating pressure range for the service brakes is 60 to 125 psi. The red needle on the air pressure gauge indicates pressure in tank number 1, which supplies the front brakes. The white needle indicates pressure in tank number 2, which supplies the rear brakes. If the pressure falls below the safe operating range, the low air indicator light will illuminate and an audible alarm will sound. If this occurs, stop in a safe area as soon as possible and have the problem corrected. Do not pump the brake. A long series of rapid brake applications could reduce system pressure. The emergency brake applies the brakes on the rear axle and functions only when air pressure has been lost from the brake system. The emergency brake begins to apply when pressure drops to 60 psi. A complete application occurs when pressure decreases to 40 psi. Air pressure is required to release the emergency brakes. Therefore, they will remain on until pressure is restored. 2 parking brake controls are provided, one on the chassis cab dashboard and the other on the upper structure cab left-hand panel. The upper structure switch is inoperative when in travel mode. The chassis park brake control must remain on when in remote mode. Apply the parking brake in the chassis cab by raising the parking brake control knob. The knob will raise automatically if system air pressure is lost. Release the parking brake by depressing the parking brake control knob. The air system must be properly pressurized to release the parking brake. The inner axle differential is controlled by a toggle lever mounted on the dashboard in the chassis cab of units equipped with rear tandem axles. With the toggle in the unlocked position, positive drive is applied only to the front tandem axle. With toggle in the locked position, positive drive is applied to the front and rear tandem axles. Limit the use of the interaxle differential lock to only when operating in remote or when more traction is required. Differential damage will occur if the interaxle differential is engaged with the wheel spinning. The differential lock is controlled by a toggle lever mounted on the dashboard in the chassis cab. With the toggle in the unlocked position, positive drive is only applied to one side of the axle. With the toggle in the locked position, positive drive is applied to both sides of the rear axle. Use this feature only in low speeds when the wheels are not slipping or when extra traction is necessary or when digging over the side. Keep in mind the turning radius will increase when the differential is locked. Indicator lights show whether the differential lock and interaxle differential are engaged or disengaged. Engaging the differential lock while the wheels are slipping may cause damage to the differential. When parking the excavator, park in a safe location on flat level ground away from other equipment and traffic. Shut down the engine by 1. Applying the park brake. 2. Shifting the transmission to neutral. 3. Operate the engine at low idle for 3 to 5 minutes. 4. Turn the ignition off and remove the key. 5. Exit the excavator maintaining 3-point contact. And finally, chock the wheels if necessary. Now, things to remember. Do not use ether if the engine is equipped with a cold weather start aid. A long series of brake applications could reduce air pressure. Once at the job site, it will be necessary to transfer control to the upper structure cab by placing the excavator in remote mode. To do this, stop the machine in a safe level area. Apply the parking brake. Engage the differential and interaxle differential locks. Front axle drive may be selected if equipped. Put the transmission in neutral. Allow both sections of the air system to reach at least 100 psi, then turn the key to the off position. Engage remote on the travel remote switch. You may now move to the upper structure cab. Place the control cutout lever in the locked or upright position. Turn the ignition switch to the run position. 3 monitor lights should briefly illuminate. If the hydraulic pump is not engaged, the starter engagement is limited to 1/2 second intervals to allow the pump to engage. Turn the ignition switch to start the engine. If the engine does not start, the key must be returned to the off position before attempting to re-engage the starter. If the starter will not engage, check for proper park brake and shift selection in the chassis cab. Operate the engine at full throttle for upper structure operation. Move the control cutout lever down to the unlock position to engage the joysticks and pedals. When the excavator is in remote mode, the dig brakes set and release automatically as the travel pedal is activated and released. If the automatic dig brake does not apply when the travel pedal was released, use the park brake switch to apply the brakes. If this occurs, have the unit repaired before continuing operation. The following cab controls are used for travel in remote mode: the travel pedal, steering pedal, and the travel speed switch. Travel is possible in remote mode at all times except when you hear an audible alarm and see an illuminated travel lockout symbol on the monitor. If this occurs, the travel pedal must be activated slowly and carefully in both directions until the light and alarm go off. The dig brake will not release if the light is illuminated. Before traveling, check to be sure that you are aware of the orientation of the upper structure with regard to the chassis. Confusion could cause travel in the opposite direction you are expecting. The travel pedal controls chassis travel. Chassis speed is controlled by the travel speed switch and amount of pedal actuation. Press and release the pedal gently for smoother starting and stopping. The steering pedal controls right and left turns. Depress the left side of the pedal to turn left or the right side of the pedal to turn right. Use the travel speed switch to shift between low range and high range when operating from the upper structure cab. Holding the steering wheel or remote steering pedal in the full turn position will cause the system to overheat. This may cause the steering pump to fail. Prior to driving the excavator from the chassis cab and after operating in remote mode, always check the brakes. To do this, position the excavator on a level surface, apply the park brake, and stop the engine. Check the brake actuator chambers and rods, brake actuator brackets, and the slack adjusters for damage. When the brake is applied, the actuator rod should form an approximate right angle with the slack adjuster. Check to see if the orange bands are visible on the service brake push rods. The bands will be visible if the brakes need replaced. Position the boom over the rear of the chassis and embed the bucket into the ground or against a solid object. Apply down pressure while pushing and pulling with the boom while a helper watches for rotation at each wheel. Rotation of any wheel indicates brake failure on that wheel. Have any failures corrected before driving the machine. Position the boom in the boom rest. Use the decal on the side of the boom to provide adequate clearance for the attachment. Secure the boom using the boom hold-down device. Apply the parking brake and idle the engine. Shut down the engine and proceed to the chassis cab. Prior to shutting down the excavator, find a safe location on flat, level ground, away from other equipment and traffic. To shut the unit down from the upper structure, stop the machine by removing pressure from the foot pedals. Swing the machine to align the upper structure with the chassis. Lower the boom to the ground or into the boom rest. Apply the park brake. Operate the engine at low idle for 3 to 5 minutes. Turn the ignition off and remove the key. Exit the excavator maintaining 3-point contact. Chock the wheels if necessary. Always apply the park brake. Place the boom in the boom rest or lower the boom to the ground and stop the engine before leaving the cab. Avoid parking on roads or highways. If this cannot be avoided or in the event of an emergency, make sure you use warning flags, flares, or flashing lights to alert others. If the excavator must be shut down for an extended period of time, be sure it is in travel mode. Here are some things to remember. Check the orientation of the upper relative to the chassis to ensure proper travel direction. Apply the park brake, place the boom in the rest or on the ground, and stop the engine before leaving the cab. Use the following procedure to park your Gradall. Select an area that is secure. Apply the park brake. Ensure the engine has been properly shut down. Fill the fuel tank to minimize condensation. Disconnect the battery to aid in preventing theft. Lock all doors and covers and install protective window covers if available. If you are parking the excavator for an extended period of time, remove the batteries. Protect all exposed cylinder rods with Bow Shield T9. Clean all mud and debris to aid in preventing corrosion, and lubricate all grease points. Things to remember. Select a secure area to park the machine. Perform the proper shutdown procedure. Fill the fuel tank. Before excavating, make sure you perform all the required pre-operational checks and ensure all underground utilities have been marked. Position the excavator for the most efficient attachment usage. Properly secure the job site. Identify and mark the circle of safety. Stop the engine and secure the door and windows in a desired position for proper vision and ventilation. If required, remove the boom tie-down chain from the boom. Start and set the engine to full throttle. Move the control cutout lever to the down position to energize the joysticks and foot pedals. Test the controls before operating. If the controls have been changed to another control pattern, make sure you are familiar with the functions and ensure the decal in the cab shows the actual pattern in use. Alternate control pattern decals are located in the upper structure cab manual compartment. If you do not have the proper control pattern decal, do not change the control pattern. Pay close attention to the boom position in relation to the chassis. It is possible for the boom to make contact with certain parts of the chassis. Gradalls are capable of roughing out basic excavations and doing general digging and trenching. However, what sets it apart from all others is its ability to do finish work like grading and compacting without the need for additional equipment. The Gradall dig cycle is unique from standard knuckle boom excavators. Gradalls use a telescoping boom and bucket to dig, whereas other excavators use a boom, stick, and bucket. This leads to two different motions used to dig. The Gradall uses the boom to fill the bucket, where a knuckle boom uses the bucket cylinder. Finish work such as grading and compacting is accomplished by combining the boom in, boom down, and bucket open functions simultaneously. The operator is able to make the appropriate grade with the proper amount of joystick activation based on boom position. Let's look at the boom and bucket doing a grading operation in slow motion. Notice that the bottom of the bucket is even with the ground at the beginning of the cut. As the cut is performed, you will see the main boom lowering while the teleboom is retracting and the bucket is opening. Let's look at that again. Here's how it will look at normal speed. Notice that as the bucket gets closer to the chassis, the boom in speed and bucket open speed must increase in order to maintain a desired grade. This requires more activation of the joystick for those particular functions. In order to obtain a smooth grade, smooth operation of the joysticks is required. Let's watch that again. Trenching operations are conducted in a similar manner. Notice the position of the bucket just prior to the cut and while retracting the boom. Close to the end of the stroke, the bucket is rotated to the closed position to keep the excavated material in. Let's watch that again. Now let's look at a side-by-side comparison. Grading is on the left and trenching on the right. Now some things to remember. Perform the pre-operation and operational checks before starting. Ensure the control pattern decal matches the pattern selected. Ensure others are not within the circle of safety. When lifting loads, the load must be centered under the bucket adapter with the boom level from side to side. The automatic boom tilt brake will not prevent the boom from tilting in response to an external load. When lifting and positioning a load with the excavator, always take the following precautions. Lift on firm, level ground. Road is not level. Failure to plan a lift properly could result in death or serious injury. Use the lift capacity chart found in the upper structure cab to determine the maximum load. Keep in mind the attachment weight and rigging must be added to the total weight of the load and then compared to the value on the lift capacity chart. Ensure the rating of the rigging exceeds the weight of the load to be lifted. Both the operator and helpers need to be thoroughly familiar with the excavator hand signals shown at the end of the operation and safety manual. Operate the machine at full throttle. Do not shut off the engine with a suspended load. Shutting off the engine will cause the front axle cylinders to unlock. Never travel with a suspended load positioned over the side of the machine. Suspend loads only as shown. Passing the load line over an open bucket can cause uncontrolled movement of the load. There is a lift capacity difference between the excavator's best and worst lift positions. Just because it can lift a load from one point does not mean it can safely deliver the load to another point. Prior to lifting and placing a load, map out the lift, swing, and lower path to ensure hydraulic and stability capacity limits are not exceeded. The strongest lifting position is over the rear with the excavator level and the boom fully retracted. When possible, begin the lift over the side and place the load over the rear of the chassis. You must plan the lift based on the worst condition of the lift and delivery, not the best. The worst condition can only be determined by performing an unload test and delivery of the load. Loads on the chart that are not shaded represent hydraulic lift capacities. Those that are shaded are tipping limits. Exceeding these capacities can cause a relief valve to open, allowing the load to fall, or in some cases, the machine to tip over. The Operation and Safety Manual has an extensive section covering this subject. Be sure that you have read and completely understand this section prior to attempting to lift or place a load. Here are some things to remember. Plan the lift properly using the lift chart. Determine the smallest capacity during all stages of the lift. Center the load under the bucket adapter. To determine if an attachment is approved for use on the excavator you're using, perform the following prior to installation. Use only Gradall approved attachments. Before selecting an attachment for a specific model, check the machine's capacity chart or consult your local Gradall distributor. If any of the above conditions are not met, do not use the attachment. Do not use unapproved attachments for the following reasons. Gradall cannot establish range and capacity limitations for will fit, homemade, altered, or other non-approved attachments. An overextended or overloaded excavator can tip over with little or no warning and cause death or serious injury to the operator and or those working nearby. Gradall cannot assure the ability of a non-approved attachment to perform its intended functions safely. Here are some of the more popular attachments used by Gradall operators today: ditching buckets, excavating buckets, trenching buckets, pavement removal buckets, dredging buckets, grading blades, hammers, mowers, telesticks, tree limb shears, grapples. Now, things to remember. Use only Gradall approved attachments. Non-approved attachments may not function safely. You will encounter many different operating environments and challenges from inside the operator's cab. Although it is impossible to list or cover them all in this video, here are some excavator operation safety tips that apply to all situations. Read and understand the Gradall Excavator Operator and Safety Manual and the AEM Safety Manuals. Perform the pre-operation inspection and function check before each work shift. Ensure the steps and handholds are secure and clean. Use three-point contact when climbing on the machine. Prior to digging, perform a job site inspection and call the one-call number 811 to have all utilities located and marked. Have overhead power lines de-energized. Secure and protect the work zone. Identify and mark the circle of safety with orange cones and traffic and pedestrian barriers. Always look in the direction of travel before moving. Shut the excavator down properly. Ensure the machine has been maintained according to the schedule in the Operator and Safety Manual. Remember that you, as the operator, are the key to safety. Good safety practices not only protect you, but also your co-workers and bystanders. Operator training must be conducted by a trained and experienced instructor and should include this video, classroom instruction, hands-on time operating the controls of the excavator, and successful completion of an exam. Gradall periodically offers a special Gradall Excavator Train the Trainer program at the factory in New Philadelphia, Ohio. This program trains potential operator instructors in the proper methods and procedures needed to train operators and in the use of the Gradall Safety Training Program. If you are interested in learning more about either the Safety Training Program or the Gradall Excavator Train the Trainer, call Gradall at 1-800-445-4752. The parent company of Gradall Industries Incorporated is the Alamo Group, a world leader in the design, manufacture, distribution, and service of high-quality equipment for right-of-way maintenance and agriculture for over 35 years. Our products include tractor and truck-mounted mowing and other vegetation maintenance equipment, excavators, street sweepers, vacuum trucks, snow removal equipment, pothole patchers, agricultural attachments and related aftermarket parts and services.